Good evening and welcome back to Evelina. I do apologise for the few days break which I had not intended to take from making these videos. However, in the spirit of a true 18th century heroine, I took to my bed for a few days with a fever and very suitably feminine symptoms of total exhaustion. I'm now perked up and ready to return to the reading, and I hope you are too. So, we left our protagonists back at Howard Grove, with Lady Howard exhorting Mr. Villars to allow some petition to be made to Sir John Belmont, Evelina's true and legitimate father, to recognise his daughter. We continue. Letter the 28th. Mr. Villars to Lady Howard. Berry Hill, 2nd May. Your letter, madam, has opened a source of anxiety to which I look forward with dread, and which to see closed I scarcely dare expect. I am unwilling to oppose my opinion to that of your ladyship, nor indeed can I, but by arguments which I believe will rather rank me as a hermit, ignorant of the world, and fit only for my cell, than as a proper guardian in an age such as this for an accomplished young woman. Yet thus called upon, it behoves me to explain and endeavour to vindicate the reasons by which I have hitherto been guided. The mother of this dear child, who was led to destruction by her own imprudence, the hardness of heart of Madame Duval, and the villainy of Sir John Belmont, was once, what her daughter is now, the best beloved of my heart. And her memory, so long as my own holds, I shall love, mourn, and honour. On the fatal day that her gentle soul left its mansion, and not many hours ere she ceased to breathe, I solemnly plighted my faith, that her child, if it lived, should know no father but myself or her acknowledged husband. You cannot, madam, suppose that I found much difficulty in adhering to this promise, and forbearing to make any claim upon Sir John Belmont. Could I feel an affection the most paternal for this poor sufferer, and not abominate her destroyer? Could I wish to deliver to him, who had so basely betrayed the mother, the helpless and innocent offspring, who, born in so much sorrow, seemed entitled to all the compassionate tenderness of pity? For many years the name alone of that man, accidentally spoken in my hearing, almost divested me of my Christianity, and scarce could I forbear to execrate him. Yet I sought not, neither did I desire, to deprive him of his child, had he, with any appearance of contrition, or indeed of humanity, endeavoured to become less unworthy of such a blessing. But he is a stranger to all paternal feelings, and has, with a savage insensibility, forborne to inquire even into the existence of this sweet orphan, though the situation of his injured wife was but too well known to him. You wish to be acquainted with my intentions. I must acknowledge they were such as I now perceive would not be honoured with your ladyship's approbation. For though I have sometimes thought of presenting Evelina to her father, and demanding the justice which is her due, yet at other times I have both disdained and feared the application. Disdained, lest it should be refused, and feared, lest it should be accepted. Lady Belmont, who was firmly persuaded of her approaching dissolution, frequently and earnestly besought me that if her infant was a female, I would not abandon her to the direction of a man so wholly unfit to take charge of her education, but should she be importunately demanded, that I would retire with her abroad and carefully conceal her from Sir John, till some apparent change in his sentiments and conduct should announce him less improper for such a trust. And often would she say, "Should the poor babe have any feelings correspondent with its mother's, it will have no want, while under your protection." Alas, she had no sooner quitted it herself than she was plunged into a gulf of misery that swallowed up her peace, reputation, and life. During the childhood of Evelina, I suggested 1,000 plans for the security of her birthright, but I as oftentimes rejected them. I was in a perpetual conflict between the desire that she should have justice done her, and the apprehension that, while I improved her fortune, I should endanger her mind. However, as her character began to be formed, and her disposition to be displayed, my perplexity abated. The road before me seemed less thorny and intricate, and I thought I could perceive the right path from the wrong, for when I observed the artless openness, the ingenuous simplicity of her nature, when I saw that her guileless and innocent soul fancied all the world to be pure and disinterested as herself, and that her heart was open to every impression with which love, pity, or art might assail it. Then did I flatter myself that to follow my own inclination and to secure her welfare was the same thing. Since to expose her to the snares and dangers inevitably encircling a house of which the master is dissipated and unprincipled, without the guidance of a mother, or any prudent or sensible female, seemed to me no less than suffering her to stumble into some dreadful pit, when the sun was in its meridian. My plan, therefore, was not merely to educate and to cherish her as my own, but to adopt her as the heiress of my small fortune, and to bestow her upon some worthy man with whom she might spend her days in tranquillity, cheerfulness, and good humour, untainted by vice, folly, or ambition. So much for the time past. Such have been the motives by which I have been governed, and I hope they will be allowed not merely to account for, but also to justify the conduct which has resulted from them. It remains now to speak of the time to come. And here indeed I am sensible of difficulties which I almost despair of surmounting according to my wishes. I pay the highest deference to your ladyship's opinion, which it is extremely painful to me not to concur with. Yet I am so well acquainted with your goodness, that I presume to hope it would not be absolutely impossible for me to offer such arguments as might lead you to think with me that this young creature's chance of happiness seems less doubtful in retirement than it would be in the gay and dissipated world. But why should I perplex your ladyship with reasoning that can turn to so little account? For, alas, what arguments, what persuasions can I make use of, with any prospect of success, to such a woman as Madame Duval? Her character and the violence of her disposition intimidate me from making the attempt. She is too ignorant for instruction, too obstinate for entreaty, and too weak for reason. I will not, therefore, enter into a contest from which I have nothing to expect but altercation and impertinence. As soon would I discuss the effect of sound with the deaf, or the nature of colours with the blind, as aim at illuminating with conviction a mind so warped by prejudice, so much the slave of unruly and illiberal passions. Unused as she is to control, persuasion would but harden and opposition incense her. I yield, therefore, to the necessity which compels my reluctant acquiescence, and shall now turn all my thoughts upon considering of such methods for the conducting this enterprise as may be most conducive to the happiness of my child, and least liable to wound her sensibility. The lawsuit, therefore, I wholly and absolutely disapprove. Will you, my dear madam, forgive the freedom of an old man, if I own myself greatly surprised that you could even for a moment listen to a plan so violent, so public, so totally repugnant to all female delicacy? I am satisfied your ladyship has not weighed this project. There was a time, indeed, when to assert the innocence of Lady Belmont, and to blazon to the world the wrongs, not the guilt, by which she suffered, I proposed, nay, attempted, a similar path. But then all assistance or encouragement was denied. How cruel to the remembrance I bear of her woes is this tardy resentment of Madame Duval! She was deaf to the voice of nature, though she was hearkened to that of ambition. Never can I consent to have this dear and timid girl brought forward to the notice of the world by such a method which will subject her to all the impertinence of curiosity, the snares of conjecture, and the stings of ridicule. And for what? The attainment of wealth, which she does not want, and the gratification of vanity, which she does not feel. A child to appear against a father? No, madam. Old and infirm as I am, I would even yet sooner convey her myself to some remote part of the world, though I was sure of dying in the expedition. Far different had been the motive which would have stimulated her unhappy mother to such a proceeding. All her felicity in this world was irretrievably lost, her life was become a burden to her, and her fair fame, which she had early been taught to prize above all other things, had received a mortal wound. Therefore, to clear her own honour and to secure from blemish the birth of her child, was all the good which fortune had reserved itself the power of bestowing. But even this last consolation was withheld from her. Let milder measures be adopted. And since it must be so, let application be made to Sir John Belmont. But as to a lawsuit, I hope upon this subject never more to hear it mentioned. With Madame Duval, all pleas of delicacy would be ineffectual. Her scheme must be opposed by arguments better suited to her understanding. I will not therefore talk of its impropriety, but endeavour to prove its inutility. Have the goodness then to tell her, and her that her own intentions would be frustrated by her plan, since should the lawsuit be commenced, and even should the cause be gained, Sir John Belmont would still have it in his power, and if irritated no doubt in his inclination, to cut off her granddaughter with a shilling. She cannot do better herself than to remain quiet and inactive in the affair. The long and mutual animosity between her and Sir John will make her interference merely productive of debates and ill will. Neither would I have Evelina appear till summoned. As to myself, I must wholly decline acting, though I will, with unwearied zeal, devote all my thoughts to giving counsel. But in truth I have neither inclination nor spirits adequate to engaging personally with this man. My opinion is that he would pay more respect to a letter from your ladyship upon this subject than from any other person. I therefore advise and hope that you will yourself take the trouble of writing to him in order to open the affair. When he shall be inclined to see Evelina, I have for him a posthumous letter, which his much injured lady left to be presented to him, if ever such a meeting should take place. The views of the Brangtons in suggesting this scheme are obviously interested. They hope, by securing to Evelina the fortune of her father, to induce Madame Duval to settle her own upon themselves. In this, however, they would probably be mistaken, for little minds have ever a propensity to bestow their wealth upon those who are already in affluence, and therefore the less her grandchild requires her assistance, the more gladly she will give it. I have but one thing more to add, from which, however, I can by no means recede. My word, so solemnly given to Lady Belmont, that her child should never be owned but with herself, must be inviolably adhered to. I am, dear madam, with great respect, your ladyship's most obedient servant, Arthur Villars. Letter the 29th. Mr. Villars to Evelina. Still going. Berry Hill, 2nd May. How sincerely do I sympathize in the uneasiness and concern which my beloved Evelina has so much reason to feel. The cruel scheme in agitation is equally repugnant to my judgment and my inclination, yet to oppose it seems impracticable. To follow the dictates of my own heart, I should instantly recall you to myself, and never more consent to your being separated from me. But the manners and opinions of the world demand a different conduct. Hope, however, for the best, and be satisfied you shall meet with no indignity. If you are not received into your own family as you ought to be, and with the distinction that is your due, you shall leave it for ever, and once again restored to my protection, secure your own tranquillity, and make, as you have hitherto done, all the happiness of my life. Letter the 30th. Evelina to the Reverend Mr. Villars. Howard Grove, 6th May. The die is thrown, and I attend the event in trembling. Lady Howard has written to Paris, and sent her letter to town, to be forwarded in the ambassador's packet, and in less than a fortnight, therefore, she expects an answer. Oh, sir, with what anxious impatience shall I await its arrival? Upon it seems to depend the fate of my future life. My solicitude is so great, and my suspense so painful, that I cannot rest a moment in peace, or turn my thoughts into any other channel. Deeply interested as I now am in the event, most sincerely do I regret that the plan was ever proposed. Methinks it cannot end to my satisfaction, for either I must be torn from the arms of my more than father, or I must have the misery of being finally convinced that I am cruelly rejected by him who has the natural claim to that dear title, a title which to write, mention, or think of fills my whole soul with filial tenderness. The subject is discussed here eternally. Captain Mervyn and Madame Duval, as usual, quarrel whenever it is started, but I am so wholly engrossed by my own reflections that I cannot even listen to them. My imagination changes the scene perpetually. One moment I am embraced by a kind and relenting parent, who takes me to that heart from which I am hitherto been banished, and supplicates through me peace and forgiveness from the ashes of my mother. At another, he regards me with detestation, considers me as the living image of an injured saint, and repulses me with horror. But I will not afflict you with the melancholy phantasms of my brain. I will endeavour to compose my mind to a more tranquil state, and forbear to write again till I have in some measure succeeded. May heaven bless you, my dearest sir, and long, long may it continue you on earth to bless your grateful Evelina. Letter the 31st. Lady Howard to Sir John Belmont, Baronet. Howard Grove, 5th May. Sir, you will, doubtless, be surprised at receiving a letter from one who had for so short a period the honour of your acquaintance. and that at so great a distance of time. But the motive which has induced me to take this liberty is of so delicate a nature, that were I to commence making apologies for my officiousness, I fear my letter would be too long for your patience. You have probably already conjectured the subject upon which I mean to treat. My regard for Mr. Evelyn and his amiable daughter was well known to you, nor can I ever cease to be interested in whatever belongs to their memory or family. I must own myself somewhat distressed in what manner to introduce the purport of my writing. Yet, as I think that, in affairs of this kind, frankness is the first requisite to a good understanding between the parties concerned, I will neither torment you nor myself with punctilious ceremonies, but proceed instantly and openly to the business which occasions my giving you this trouble. I presume, sir, it would be superfluous to tell you that your child resides still in Dorsetshire, and is still under the protection of the Reverend Mr. Villars, in whose house she was born. For though no inquiries concerning her have reached his ears, or mine, I can never suppose it possible you have forborne to make them. It only remains, therefore, to tell you that your daughter is now grown up, that she has been educated with the utmost care and the utmost success, and that she is now a most deserving, accomplished, and amiable young woman. Whatever may be your view for her future destination in life, it seems time to declare it. She is greatly admired, and I doubt not will be very much sought after. It is proper, therefore, that her future expectations and your pleasure concerning her should be made known. Believe me, sir, she merits your utmost attention and regard. You could not see and know her, and remain unmoved by those sensations of affection which belong to so near and tender a relationship. She is the lovely resemblance of her lovely mother. Pardon, sir, the liberty I take in mentioning that unfortunate lady, but I think it behoves me upon this occasion to show the esteem I felt for her. Allow me therefore to say, and be not offended at my freedom, that the memory of that excellent lady has but too long remained under the aspersions of calumny. Surely it is time to vindicate her fame. And how can that be done in a manner more eligible, more grateful to her friends, or more honourable to yourself, than by openly receiving as your child the daughter of the late Lady Belmont? The venerable man who has had the care of her education deserves your warmest acknowledgment for the unremitting pains he has taken and the attention he has shown in the discharge of his trust. Indeed, she has been peculiarly fortunate in meeting with such a friend and guardian. A more worthy man, or one whose character seems nearer to perfection, does not exist. Permit me to assure you, sir, she will amply repay whatever regard and favour you may hereafter show her by the comfort and happiness you cannot fail to find in her affection and duty. To be owned properly by you is the first wish of her heart, and I am sure that to merit your approbation will be the first study of her life. I fear that you will think this address impertinent, but I must rest upon the goodness of my intention to plead my excuse. I am, sir, your most obedient, humble servant, M. Howard. Letter the 32nd. Evelina to the Reverend Mr. Villars. Howard Grove, Kent, 10th May. Our house has been enlivened today by the arrival of a London visitor, and the necessity I have been under of concealing the uneasiness of my mind has made me exert myself so effectually that I even think it is really diminished, or at least my thoughts are not so totally, so very anxiously, occupied by one only subject as they lately were. I was strolling this morning with Miss Mervyn down a lane about a mile from the Grove, when we heard the trampling of horses, and fearing the narrowness of the passage, we were turning hastily back, but stopped upon hearing a voice call out, "Pray, ladies, don't be frightened, or I will walk my horse." We turned again, and then saw Sir Clement Willoughby. He dismounted, and approaching us with the reins in his hand, presently recollected us. "Good heaven!" cried he with his usual quickness, "do I see Miss Anville? And you too, Miss Mervyn?" He immediately ordered his servant to take charge of his horse, and then, advancing to us, took a hand of each, which he pressed to his lips, and said 1,000 fine things concerning his good fortune, our improved looks, and the charms of the country when inhabited by such rural deities. "The town, ladies, has languished since your absence, or at least I have so much languished myself as to be absolutely insensible to all it had to offer. One refreshing breeze, such as I now enjoy, awakens me to new vigour, life, and spirit. But I never before had the good luck to see the country in such perfection. Has not almost everybody left town, sir?" said Miss Mervyn. "I am ashamed to answer you, madam, but indeed it is as full as ever, and will continue so till after the birthday. However, you ladies were so little seen that there are but few who knew what it has lost. For my own part, I felt it too sensibly to be able to endure the place any longer." "Is there anybody remaining there that we were acquainted with?" cried I. "Oh yes, ma'am." And then he named 2 or 3 persons we have seen when with him, but he did not mention Lord Orville, and I would not ask him, lest he should think me curious. Perhaps, if he stays here some time, he may speak of him by accident. He was proceeding in this complimentary style, when we were met by the captain, who no sooner perceived Sir Clement than he hastened up to him, gave him a hearty shake of the hand, a cordial slap on the back, and some other equally gentle tokens of satisfaction, assuring him of his great joy at his visit, and declaring he was as glad to see him as if he had been a messenger who had brought news that a French ship had sunk. Sir Clement, on the other hand, expressed himself with equal warmth, and protested that he had been so eager to pay his respects to Captain Mervyn, that he had left London in its full lustre and 1,000 engagements unanswered, merely to give himself that pleasure. "We shall have rare sport," said the captain, "for do you know, the old Frenchwoman is among us. For George, I have scarce made any use of her yet, by reason I have had nobody with me that could enjoy a joke. Howsomever, it shall go hard, but we'll have some diversion now." Sir Clement very much approved of the proposal, and we then went into the house, where he had a very grave reception from Mrs. Mervyn, who was by no means pleased with his visit, and a look of much discontent from Madame Duval, who said to me in a low voice, "I'd as soon have the old Nick as that man, for he's the most impertinentest person in the world, and isn't never on my side." The captain is now actually occupied in contriving some scheme which he says is to play the old dowager off, and so eager and delighted is he at the idea that he can scarcely restrain his raptures sufficiently to conceal his design, even from herself. I wish, however, since I do not dare put Madame Duval upon her guard, that he had the delicacy not to acquaint me with his intention. And there we will pause, for the next letter is very long indeed, and I look forward to reading it tomorrow. Yes, anyway, I hope you have a lovely evening. Good night.